We have over 100 vaults spread across America. Enough for each of you to claim several. Whatever you want to do, no one needs to know.
But we're talking about making a significant investment based on a hypothetical. How can you guarantee results?
By dropping the bomb ourselves.
Episode 1: The End. The year is 2077, and with most of the natural resources on Earth depleted, the United States and China have been engaged in a fierce war for decades. Fearing the very real possibility of total nuclear annihilation, the United States has prepared for the inevitable fallout, but remains hopeful for peace. In Hollywood, Cooper Howard, who was once a major movie star, now finds himself working children's parties as a cowboy act. And while packing up after working one such party, Cooper's young daughter, Janie, is horrified as she witnesses an atomic bomb explode in the distance. Thrown into action amid the panic, Cooper and Janie flee on their trusty horse, as more and more nukes rain down on the city, marking the end of the world as we know it. 219 years later, in 2296, we are introduced to Lucy McLean, a young woman who lives in an enormous fallout shelter called a vault. Thanks to the megacorporation Vault-Tec, countless vaults were built around the United States, providing shelter from the radiated hellscape on the surface. Inside Vault 33, which is connected to two other vaults, 31 and 32, Lucy lives a relatively normal life with her father, Hank McLean, who's also the overseer, and her younger brother, Norm. Unfortunately, Lucy's mother died when she and Norm were children, leaving her nothing but memories. During a triennial trade with the neighboring Vault 32, Lucy is set to marry a young man named Monty, and the two vaults celebrate the wedding in high spirits. During a toast, Hank reinforces the importance of the Vault Dwellers' overall mission, to return to the surface one day and lead humanity back to a lawful and prosperous civilization. While everybody else celebrates, Norm sneaks off to Vault 32, and after witnessing destruction and dead bodies, realizes something is horribly wrong. Back in Vault 33, Lucy's wrist-bound computer, which is called a Pip-Boy, alerts her to high levels of radiation, and then she deduces that Monty and the rest of the visitors are actually raiders from the surface. After barely winning a fight with Monty, Lucy jumps out of the proverbial frying pan and into the fire as the bloodthirsty raiders, hopped up on chems, engage in a ruthless battle against the Vault Dwellers. Now luckily, Lucy rescues Norm from the chaos, and together with her father, they go to confront Moldaver. However, Moldaver has a bomb, and after Hank forces Lucy to safety, he surrenders to the leader, who carts him away, leaving the Vault Dwellers to scatter as the bomb explodes. In the wake of the mayhem, the members of Vault 33 hold a meeting, and when Lucy suggests sending a search party to rescue her father, no one seems interested. Refusing to hide in cowardice while her father suffers, Lucy decides to carry out the mission herself, and with help from Norm and her cousin Chet, Lucy bravely leaves the vault and steps out into the ruined wasteland of California. Elsewhere, we meet Maximus, a soft-spoken member of the Brotherhood of Steel, who deals with constant hazing from his fellow grunts. Created after the nuclear apocalypse of 2077 and led by a council of elders, the Brotherhood of Steel is a highly trained paramilitary order that is spread across the United States. Believing that humanity can no longer be trusted with advanced technology, the Knights of the Brotherhood scour the wasteland to secure any remaining pre-war artifacts and prevent them from falling into the wrong hands. As a low-ranking aspirant, Maximus works hard to rise through the ranks, but his friend, aspirant Dane, is chosen for promotion first. However, when someone sabotages Dane, Max receives the promotion instead, and is branded as a squire under the intimidating Knight Titus. Preparing to leave the base, Maximus and the Knights learn that their primary objective is to hunt down an escaped scientist from a rival faction called the Enclave, who claim to be the remnants of the pre-war United States government. According to Elder Cleric Quintus, this escaped scientist holds an artifact that could potentially save or further destroy the world. While boarding a vertibird with Knight Titus and heading into the untamed wilds of the wasteland, Max prepares for his first combat mission as a freshly anointed squire. As night falls somewhere in the wasteland, a trio of bandits who have also caught wind of the bounty on the Enclave scientist dig up the body of Cooper Howard. Now surprisingly, after 2 centuries, Cooper is still alive as he has become a mutated human known as a ghoul. Due to the high levels of radiation in their blood, ghouls have an extremely long lifespan, but often lose their minds and become feral. However, Cooper has yet to turn feral, and the bandits ask for his help in hunting down the scientists. Showcasing his brutal and unfeeling nature, Cooper straight up murders the three men for fun and leaves to wander the wasteland once again. Episode 2: The Target. During the mid-2290s, Dr. Siggy Wilzig, the Enclave scientist, works tirelessly on experiments with young dogs. Feeling a bit of compassion, Wilzig decides to secretly adopt one of the test subjects, a puppy named CX-404, and cares for the dog while he works on a tiny device that could be the biggest breakthrough in his career. A few years later, in 2296, Wilzig finally accomplishes his goal and hides the device in his neck, but he is discovered by a coworker who is quickly dispatched by CX-404, whom Wilzig now calls 4. Seeing no other option, Wilzig and 4 flee the facility with the device safely embedded in the doctor's neck. Back in the present day, Lucy starts to explore the vast wasteland, but after setting up camp for the night, she encounters Wilzig. Recognizing her outfit, he tells her to return to the vault as the wasteland is a brutal place, and he fears that she does not have what it takes to adapt. Despite Wilzig's warning, Lucy continues her adventure the next day and is directed to the nearby city of Philly by a local survivor. Meanwhile, Max and Knight Titus also head towards Philly, but Titus grows bored and demands that they stop to explore. When the pair investigate a nearby cave, they are attacked by a mutated bear called a yaoguai, which fatally wounds Titus as he flees. Now Max shoots and kills the yaoguai, but he decides to let Knight Titus die, fearing the consequences of failing his duty as a squire. After Titus expires, Max commandeers the Knight's T-60 power armor and decides to hunt down the scientist himself. Arriving in Philly, Lucy seeks information from a local shopkeeper named Ma June, who instead laughs in her face and tells her to get lost. Outside, she runs back into Wilzig, and unfortunately, the pair are ambushed by Cooper, who immediately resorts to violence. As everyone in Philly tries to kill the rampaging ghoul, Max arrives, introducing himself as Knight Titus, and attempts to quell the chaos, while Lucy and Ma June tend to an injured Wilzig. Seeing no other options, the shopkeeper admits that she was hired to lead Wilzig to Moldaver, and gives Lucy a set of coordinates so she can escort the scientist instead. As Lucy and Wilzig slip out of Philly undetected, Cooper eventually outsmarts Max, forcing his power armor jets to malfunction and sending him soaring out of the battlefield. Still invested in his hunt for Wilzig, Cooper patches up 4, who he harmed in the fight, and begins to track the scientist using the dog's trusty nose. As Lucy and Wilzig travel across the barren wasteland, he eventually collapses from exhaustion, resting behind a downed satellite. Knowing that he is becoming a burden, Wilzig reveals that he has swallowed a dose of poison, and that if Lucy wants to survive, she'll need to cut off his head and bring it to Moldaver, since his entire body is too heavy to carry. As Wilzig peacefully passes away, Lucy is faced with her first horrific act in the wasteland, and armed with a medical saw called a Ripper, she begins to decapitate the deceased scientist. Episode 3: The Head. Flashing back years before the apocalypse, Cooper works on a new movie, but he starts to feel uncomfortable with the politicization of the narrative. Outside the set, he runs into his wife, Barb, who works as an executive at Vault-Tec. Thanks to her connections, Barb informs Cooper that he will be the face of an upcoming advertising campaign for the company, which he happily accepts. In the present-day wasteland, Cooper finds the remnants of Wilzig's body, but he is overcome by sickness from his ghoulish nature. So to stave off becoming feral, he takes a dose of a yellowish medicine before leaving. That night, Lucy sets up camp, and as a backup plan, she installs a tracker into Wilzig's head so she always knows its location. With his power armor damaged, Max takes a short break, but he is contacted by the Brotherhood via radio. Impersonating Knight Titus, he lies and claims that his squire is dead, but the Brotherhood just decide to send him another squire. After a quick trip to Philly, he returns to find bandits plundering his power armor, and after a quick tussle, he eventually dispatches them. Shortly thereafter, the Brotherhood drops off Max's new squire, Thaddeus. Continuing her quest, Lucy arrives near a large body of water, and is ambushed by a giant mutated creature called a gulper, which snatches up the scientist's head. To make matters even worse, she is then confronted by Cooper, who ties her up and uses her as a lure for the gulper. When the horrifying beast finally takes the bait and almost swallows Lucy whole, she escapes by smashing the monster with Cooper's leather bag, destroying the ghoul's medicine in the process. Infuriated, and with Wilzig's head still in the gulper's stomach, Cooper decides to take Lucy hostage and heads out to find more medication, leaving 4 at the dock. Meanwhile, Max and Thaddeus continue to search for the head by following a faint trail of radiation left by Cooper. The trail eventually leads them to the lake, where they are also attacked by the gulper. Working together, the duo essentially disembowel the creature, recovering the head of Dr. Wilzig in the process. Back in Vault 33, the Temporary Leadership Council, consisting of Vault dwellers Woody, Betty, and Reg, struggle to form a cohesive plan regarding the remaining Raider prisoners. While the council proposes that the prisoners should be rehabilitated, Norm suggests that they should just be put to death instead. To make matters worse, one of the engineers informs the group that the Vault's water chip has broken, leaving only 2 months of water for the entire community. Flashing back to pre-apocalypse Hollywood, Cooper prepares for the advertisement gig by suiting up in a handcrafted Vault Dweller suit. All smiles and pleasantries, he steps into the lights, and trying out a few different poses, he strikes a simple but iconic thumbs up, becoming the face of the Vault-Tec brand and its mascot, Vault Boy. Episode 4: The Ghouls. On the hunt for more ghoul medicine, Cooper and Lucy stop to visit Roger, a ghoul who is on the verge of turning feral. When Roger is unable to offer any medicine, Cooper puts him out of his misery, extracts supplies from the corpse, and then leaves to continue the search. As the sun continues to drain Lucy, she grows thirsty, but Cooper refuses to give her any water, so she is forced to drink from a stagnant, radiated pool. However, when Cooper is overtaken by a coughing fit, Lucy tries to run away, but to no avail. Fighting back against her captor, Lucy bites off one of Cooper's fingers, but instead of fury, he seems oddly proud. In response, he casually slices off one of Lucy's fingers with his knife, claiming it to be an honest exchange. Back in Vault 33, an election for the Overseer has begun, with Betty, Woody, and Reg all in the running. Life is still uneasy in the Vault as everyone adjusts to the new circumstances, including Norm and Lucy's cousin, Chet. When Chet is awkwardly seduced by a pregnant Vault dweller named Stephanie, things only get more complicated when she goes into labor. Meanwhile, Norm grows more suspicious, and after recruiting Chet, the pair decide to further investigate Vault 32. While inside the ruined vault, they discover even more evidence of murder and mayhem, and deduce that the Vault dwellers went insane several years before the Raiders even arrived. When they check out the Overseer's computer, Norm learns that the surface door to Vault 32 was opened by his deceased mother's Pip-Boy. On the surface, Lucy and Cooper make their way to a destroyed Super Duper Mart, where Cooper offers to trade Lucy for a batch of ghoul medicine. With a gun at her back, Lucy has no other choice but to head inside, where she meets a Mr. Handy robot named Snip Snip. While Snip Snip seems kind and even gives her a new finger, the robot plainly states that he plans to harvest her organs before tranquilizing her. Waking up on a gurney as Snip Snip rolls her through the store, Lucy witnesses several ghouls being held against their will before she meets 2 drug dealers, Huey and Squirrel, who are indifferent to her plight. Breaking free from Snip Snip and using the robot as a sort of impromptu weapon, Lucy forces Huey and Squirrel to release their captive ghouls, not realizing that many of them are feral. When the ghouls are freed, the feral ones immediately attack, killing Huey and Squirrel instantaneously, but Lucy remains unscathed. Retrieving some vials of ghoul medicine, she leaves the store and throws a few vials towards a suffering Cooper, before abandoning him altogether. As Lucy leaves, Cooper heads back inside the supermarket, and while heavily partaking in a variety of drugs, he watches one of his old movies from before the apocalypse and reflects on his journey so far. Episode 5: The Past. With Wilzig's head in their possession, Max and Thaddeus celebrate finally achieving their objective. However, knowing that it's just a matter of time until his true identity is exposed, Maximus lifts the visor of his power armor, revealing to Thaddeus that he is still alive, and explaining Knight Titus's death. Unfortunately, Thaddeus views Max as a traitor and attempts to steal Wilzig's head and flee. Although Thaddeus is severely wounded when Max steps on his foot, the Squire manages to escape by stealing the fusion core that powers the T-60 armor, and then flees with Wilzig's head. Back in the vault, Norm and Chet wrap up their investigation of Vault 32 by finding a pile of corpses, all seemingly killed when trying to access Vault 31. Later, while looking at transfer records on a computer, Norm also learns that every Vault 33 overseer originated from Vault 31, including his father as well as Betty. As the Vault 33 election wraps up, Betty is elected as the new overseer, further fueling Norm's suspicions. And the next day, Overseer Betty reveals her plan to restore the vaults and announces that some people will be moving to Vault 32 while others will stay in Vault 33. When everyone heads over to Vault 32 to check things out, Norm and Chet are surprised to discover that the vault has been completely scrubbed clean overnight. In a private meeting, Norm asks Betty what happened to his mother's Pip-Boy after her death, and she explains that it was buried with her body. Betty claims to know this for a fact and states that she and Hank McLean personally buried her. Sometime later, Lucy finds Max trapped in his power armor and frees him, but soon collapses from exhaustion. When she wakes up, Max introduces himself as Knight Titus and promises to help her find her father as long as she helps him recover the head from Thaddeus. During their journey, they discuss their respective childhoods, and Lucy reminisces about playing with her mother in the vault's courtyard, though she swears that she could feel the heat of the real sun. Later, when Max and Lucy run into a pair of fiends on a bridge, a shootout ensues, and Max is left with a bullet wound. Later on, they find a billboard for Shady Sands, which is the capital city of the new California Republic faction. Dejected, Lucy realizes that civilization was already restarted without the help of the Vault Dwellers. However, when the pair head to Shady Sands proper, Lucy also discovers that the entire city was obliterated by a nuclear bomb, leaving only a massive crater where the city once stood. Solemnly, Max reveals that he was actually born in Shady Sands, but was rescued by the Brotherhood after the bombs dropped. Growing weaker from his bullet wound, Lucy guides Max to a nearby medical lab, but they fall into a trap. Waking up, Max and Lucy are astounded when they realize that they have fallen into the relative safety of Vault number 4. Episode 6: The Trap. Flashing back to the past, Cooper Howard shoots a commercial for Vault-Tec, and after the shoot wraps up, he is introduced to another Vault-Tec executive, Bud Askins, who can't help but share his wild ideas for the future. Later that night, at a rap party held at Cooper's home, he catches up with an old acting buddy, Sebastian Leslie, who has sold his voice for use in the Mr. Handy line of household robots. Both Cooper and Sebastian air their mutual problems, as they have both encountered career issues while working with Vault-Tec. Back in the present day, Lucy and Max heal up in Vault 4, but are unnerved when they notice that some of the Vault Dwellers have biological mutations, including the Vault Overseer, Benjamin, who is essentially a Cyclops. While Max is immediately suspicious of their circumstances, Lucy is determined to uncover the truth of Vault 4. While Max does a little bit of snooping, a Vault Dweller named Birdie convinces him to take a break instead, and shows him to a private room with a slew of comfortable amenities. Meanwhile, Lucy stumbles into a classroom and learns some history about the new California Republic. Originally founded in 2189, the NCR gained massive economic and political power in California by 2241. But after just a few decades, in 2277, their capital of Shady Sands fell into a decline and was eventually nuked off the map sometime after 2281. Meanwhile, at the Super Duper Mart, Cooper is confronted by two sheriffs who place him under arrest and drag him to their leader, Sorrel Booker, who is the president of a faction called the Government. Luckily, Sorrel is familiar with Cooper, and using this to his advantage, Cooper outsmarts him and kills the two sheriffs standing guard. However, Cooper is immediately distracted by a wanted poster of Moldaver, who bears a striking resemblance to someone he once knew long ago. Flashing back to the past once again, Cooper meets with another one of his old acting buddies, Charles Whiteknife, who has been participating in anti-Vault-Tec meetings. Proclaiming that Vault-Tec is evil, Charles invites Cooper to a meeting, but he is resistant to the idea. Later, Cooper gets into an argument with Barb over her loyalty to Vault-Tec, planting further seeds of doubt in his mind. Eventually, Cooper decides to head over to one of the anti-Vault-Tec meetings, where Charles introduces him to their leader, Miss Williams, who is actually Moldaver. Back at Vault 4 in the present day, Lucy stumbles upon a ritual held by some of the Vault Dwellers who were also rescued from the surface, and she is horrified to see them praising a flag of Moldaver, whom they call the Flame Mother. When Max refuses to leave the comfort of his new room, Lucy decides to head to the highly restricted 12th level, where she discovers gruesome biological experiments and several pregnant women asleep in cryo chambers. When she is discovered trespassing, a fight breaks out and Lucy is overpowered and taken hostage. Meanwhile, Max continues to munch on popcorn, completely oblivious to Lucy's plight. Episode 7: The Radio. Following a lead on the whereabouts of Moldaver, Cooper confronts a small family of scavengers wearing NCR Ranger combat armor. After the youngest scavenger, Tommy, reveals that Moldaver is hiding out at the Griffith Observatory, he dares to pull a gun on Cooper, resulting in his swift demise. Back in the past, Cooper learns more about Vault-Tec from Miss Williams. She reveals that she was working with a team on unlimited energy via cold fusion, but Vault-Tec bought out the company, preventing the world-saving technology from ever being created. Before he leaves, Miss Williams gives Cooper a covert listening device and asks him to use it to spy on his wife Barb and learn the truth about Vault-Tec. In Vault 4, Lucy is lambasted by Overseer Benjamin and Bertie, who explain the truth about the Vault. Despite Lucy's assumptions, Vault 4 was once the site of cruel biological experiments in which the Vault Dwellers took in survivors from the outside world only to be used as human test subjects. However, the test subjects eventually revolted and claimed the Vault as their own. Now, generations later, these new Vault Dwellers do their best to ease the sufferings of the remaining test subjects, all while the Vault serves as a true safe haven from the surface, even harboring survivors from shady sands like Birdie herself. When Lucy is dragged away to atone for her crimes, Max catches sight of her and decides to take action with his power armor. Ultimately, both Lucy and Max are banished to the surface, and Max decides to leave his power armor behind. Max also uses this moment to come clean and tells Lucy the truth about Knight Titus and his real identity. However, Lucy reassures Max that not everyone is perfect, and asks him to come to live with her in Vault 33 once their adventure is over. Of course, Max accepts, and their bond grows even stronger in the process. Meanwhile, Thaddeus takes a break at a gas station, and despite his gruesome foot injury, he decides to lighten his pack and continue onward, taking only Wilzig's head and a fusion core. But before he leaves, he cages 4 in an empty soda fridge, leaving the dog behind. Luckily, the pup doesn't have to wait long, as Cooper Howard eventually frees him while continuing his hunt for the head. Later on, Thaddeus encounters a quirky salesman who promises to fix his foot with a suspicious medicine in exchange for the fusion core. Surprisingly, the meds miraculously work, but before he leaves, the salesman suggests that Thaddeus might have just turned himself into a mutant. Later, Thaddeus makes his way to the KPSS radio station and asks the DJ to make a radio call to the Brotherhood of Steel. While waiting, Lucy and Max also show up and demand Wilzig's head, but when Thaddeus activates a booby trap, he survives a seemingly fatal injury and realizes that the mysterious medicine turned him into a ghoul. As the Brotherhood starts to arrive, Thaddeus gives Lucy and Max Wilzig's head and runs away, knowing full well that the Brotherhood will not accept his ghoulish nature. Seizing this opportunity, Max gives Lucy the real head and tells her to leave, planning to fool the Brotherhood with a different head. As the pair disband for the moment, they finally share a loving kiss, and Max is overfilled with joy. In Vault 33, things take a disturbing turn when all of the Raider prisoners are found poisoned in their cell, but Overseer Betty simply brushes it off. That day, everyone is given their new housing assignments, and as many of the Vault Dwellers prepare to enter Vault 32, including Chet and Stephanie, Norm continues to grow increasingly suspicious. Sneaking into Overseer Betty's office, Norm decides to finally contact the mysterious Vault 31, and surprisingly, he is granted access. Alone and somewhat frightened, he enters Vault 31, unsure of what horrors await him. Episode 8: The Beginning. Traveling with the Brotherhood of Steel back to the city of Philly, Max delivers the fake head to Elder Claire Quintus, but unfortunately, he sees through the deception. To avoid execution, Max promises to lead Quintus to the real head, giving up Lucy's location in the process. At the same time, Lucy follows Moldaver's coordinates and arrives at the Griffith Observatory in Los Angeles, which supposedly seems to be the headquarters of the local or even national NCR. Instead of a gang of ruthless raiders, Lucy is surprised to see a bustling community instead. Arriving in the command room, Lucy confronts Moldaver, who holds her father prisoner, while a desiccated ghoul sits at a table nearby. Begrudgingly, she hands over Wilzig's head, and Moldaver extracts the device hidden in his neck. However, when Lucy demands her father in return, Moldaver decides to tell her a devastating truth. Meanwhile, Norm finally enters Vault 31 and encounters a small robot containing the brain of none other than Bud Askins. Confused, he pushes his way into the vault and prepares to learn the same horrible truth that Lucy is about to learn. Inside Vault 31, there are dozens of cryo sleep pods, which house old executives of Vault Tech called Bud's Buds. Norm learns that this vault was an experiment created by Bud Askins, and that Vault Tech executives from Vault 31 have been secretly controlling Vault 32 and 33 for centuries in order to breed a group of super managers to lead the wasteland back to civilization and become the overlords of this new world. To Norm's surprise, this included his father, Hank McClane, who worked at Vault Tech before the nuclear apocalypse. When Norm threatens to expose the entire conspiracy, Bud locks the doors, sealing Norm inside Vault 31. Flashing back to the past, Cooper drops Barb off at Vault Tech and decides to use his listening device to spy on her. Unfortunately, the signal is weak, so he heads inside the building for a better vantage point. Led to Barb's office by the familiar secretary Betty, Cooper sits down and listens in on an important executive meeting. In the meeting, Bud Askins and Barb discuss the development of the vaults with presidents of various other companies, including Robco, Westtech, and many more. To Cooper's surprise, Barb suggests that the other companies should buy some of the vaults so they can use them for whatever sick experiments they can think of. To make matters even worse, Barb suggests that Vault Tech should drop the nukes themselves, ensuring profit in the face of the apocalypse. Stunned by what he's hearing, Cooper is barely able to hold it together when Betty introduces him to the young Hank McClane. Back in the present day, Moldaver tells Lucy the horrible truth about her father, Hank. When Lucy was just a child, her mother learned about Shady Sands, and wanting a better life for her children, she fled from Vault 33. Unfortunately, Hank tracked her down, and after stealing Lucy back, he had her and the entire population of Shady Sands destroyed. Additionally, she explains the device in Wilzig's head is the key to cold fusion, the exact same energy technology that Vault Tech had spent decades trying to suppress. As a final blow, Moldaver tells Lucy that the ghoul at the table is actually her mother, another terrible result of the Shady Sands nuking. While Lucy grapples with a horrible revelation, Moldaver starts the process of cold fusion, but the Brotherhood soon arrives. As the Brotherhood invades the observatory and all-out war ensues, Max heads inside with a group of knights, where they encounter none other than Cooper. In a flurry of gunfire, Cooper dispatches the knights, but Max survives, finding his way into the command room. Inside, Max finds Lucy, who tells him that her father was the man who nuked Shady Sands, Max's former home. However, Max is unable to get his revenge, as Hank commandeers a set of power armor and knocks him out cold. Lucy, refusing to be manipulated by her father any longer, pulls out her gun and takes aim. Before Lucy can pull the trigger though, Cooper interrupts and takes a potshot of his own, nailing Hank in the face with a non-lethal hit. Infuriated, Cooper demands the location of Barb and Janie, whom he has apparently been searching for since the beginning of the apocalypse, but instead of answering him, Hank runs away. Leaving Max for the moment, Lucy decides to team up with Cooper and track down her father. Sometime later, Max wakes up as Moldaver returns from the battle, wounded and dying. Activating the cold fusion reactor and taking a well-deserved rest, Moldaver watches on as the city is lit up with infinite electricity. Her goal finally achieved as she succumbs to death. After winning the battle, the Brotherhood troops make their way to the command center and, witnessing the scene, assume that Max killed Moldaver. Realizing that Moldaver was working for the greater good all along, Max is visibly disturbed as the Brotherhood celebrate their victory with him as the hero. Meanwhile, Cooper and Four, who is now called Dogmeat by Cooper, join up with Lucy and begin to track down Hank. After days of traveling through the arid desert, Now sunburnt and exhausted, Hank finally arrives at his destination, the sinful city of New Vegas. And that brings us to the end of Fallout Season 1. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this recap, consider dropping a like or share the video with a friend. And for more recaps on the latest and greatest TV shows, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to ring the bell so you won't miss a single new video. Until next time, BingeBot is logging off.